The desert stretched endlessly beneath a scorching sun, the convoy crawling across sand and rock, smoke and dust trailing behind the wrecked Humvees. He sent his last message, fingers trembling over the radio, telling command, "I am sorry," leaving suspense. Tal's distant rumble of explosions echoed across the dunes, and he glanced at the horizon, squinting against the sun, sand swirling around him, the convoy halting as tracer rounds zipped past, while the A-10 twisted low far off, leaving anticipation. Slicing sharp pulled the wounded closer, ducking behind smoldering wreckage, fire licking at metal edges, and he scanned the horizon, searching for any movement, while the convoy remained pinned down, leaving tension. The sky seemed empty and silent save for the faint hiss of heat over the sand. His radio crackled faintly with commands from distant headquarters, and he whispered, "I am sorry," again, knowing the situation was desperate, leaving suspense. Sharp explosions erupted in the distance. As scattered enemy units tried to flank the convoy, he signaled the SEALs to cover, while the Humvees crawled forward inch by inch, leaving anticipation. Smoke trailed high into the sky from burning vehicles, sand kicked up by the blast waves. While he dragged the wounded toward cover, the desert trembling with heat and tension, leaving suspense. Slicing Sharp glanced at his watch, counting the seconds, sand sticking to his sweat-soaked uniform, the horizon shimmering with heat waves, while tracer rounds cut across the sun, and the convoy moved slowly, leaving anticipation. Humvees lurched forward 1 inch at a time under covering fire, the SEALs firing on shadows and movement, while distant explosions shook the desert floor. Leaving tension, razor-edged typed another message, "I am sorry," hoping someone far away might understand. As smoke swirled around him, the convoy inching toward a small ridge, while the horizon held only dust and fear, leaving suspense. Tracer rounds zipped past him, scorching sand beneath his fingers, while the Humvees crept forward, the wounded clinging to cover and the SEALs adjusting fire, while every second stretched taut, leaving anticipation. Slicing Sharp, the desert trembled under mortar strikes, distant screams carried by wind, the Humvees moving inch by inch, while he scanned the horizon, desperate for any sign of rescue, leaving tension. Explosions erupted close, and sand and metal flew in all directions while he pulled the wounded behind cover, the SEALs firing, covering every movement, leaving suspense. Sharp smoke and fire hung heavy as the sun began to dip low, the desert air thick with heat and anticipation, while the convoy pressed forward inch by inch, the horizon alive with fire, leaving tension. Slicing Sharp glanced skyward, hoping for any sign of aircraft, for even one engine to scream over the dunes as the convoy crawled toward open ground, leaving suspense. Humvees lurched forward, sparks flying from wrecked panels, tracer rounds slicing across the sand, and he fired back at enemy positions while scanning the horizon, leaving anticipation. Razor-edged clouds erupted as mortar rounds struck near the convoy, while he coordinated fire with the SEALs dragging the wounded inch by inch, leaving tension. Sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across sand dunes, the horizon shimmering with heat waves and distant smoke, while he sent another message, fingers trembling, "I am sorry," leaving suspense. Slicing Sharp scanned the dunes and rocks for movement, sand swirling around him, tracer rounds sizzling close, while the SEALs fired in unison, covering every move, leaving anticipation. Humvees crawled inch by inch, sparks flying from destroyed panels, and he pressed the wounded lower, while explosions flared across the desert floor, leaving tension. Razor-edged smoke and fire spiraled into the sky, the desert trembling with each blast, while he ducked low, adjusting fire with the SEALs guiding the convoy inch by inch, leaving suspense. Horizon shimmered with heat waves and distant smoke, the desert alive with danger, every second stretching taut, while he sent another message, "I am sorry," hoping someone would see it, leaving anticipation. Slicing Sharp tracer rounds whizzed past, scorching the sand beneath his fingers, the convoy inching toward a slight ridge, while he dragged the wounded, and the SEALs covered every movement, leaving tension. Razor-edged explosions erupted nearby, debris and sand flying, while he fired back, coordinating the SEALs' fire, while the Humvees lurched forward inch by inch, leaving suspense. Smoke spiraled across the desert, and heat waves rippled the horizon, the convoy pressed forward. the wounded clinging to cover and every nerve taut, while he glanced skyward for a sign, leaving anticipation. Slicing sharp mortar rounds shook the desert floor, sand kicking up in clouds, while he adjusted fire for the SEALs, moving the wounded inch by inch, leaving tension. Taut Humvees crawled forward 1 inch at a time, sparks flying from torn panels, tracer rounds slicing the air, and he scanned the horizon for any hint of rescue, leaving suspense. Razor-edged sun hovered low, casting long shadows across the battlefield, while the desert trembled, explosions erupting nearby as he pulled the wounded lower, covering fire blazing, leaving anticipation. Taut smoke and fire rose across the battlefield, the Humvees inching forward, the SEALs covering every move, while tracer rounds zipped past the horizon, shimmering with heat, leaving tension. Slicing sharp desert air thick with dust and anticipation, he glanced skyward, fingers trembling, hoping for one engine roar, one sign that help was coming, leaving suspense. Taut suddenly a distant roar ripped across the horizon, sand and dust swirling, the Humvees jerking slightly as the sound grew louder, an A-10 engine screaming, sparks flying from torn panels, leaving anticipation. Razor-edged convoy halted momentarily as every eye turned toward the sky, the air alive with heat and tension, the sound growing louder, closer than it should be, leaving suspense. Slicing sharp pulled the wounded behind cover, heart hammering in his chest, the SEALs adjusting fire, while the sky darkened with the silhouette of the aircraft twisting low, one engine failing, leaving anticipation. Taut A-10 twisted violently across the desert horizon, metal frame ripping, sparks flying, engines screaming, while he realized the impossible was happening, leaving suspense. Razor-edged every soldier froze, watching the battle-damaged aircraft fight against gravity, and bullets twisting low over the battlefield, guiding them towards safety, leaving anticipation. Slicing sharp, the desert seemed to hold its breath, the A-10 limping low, its belly fuel ripping, sparks flying as he finally understood that survival had arrived, leaving suspense. Taut the roar of the damaged A-10 cut across the desert, sand swirling around the convoy, engines screaming, sparks flying from torn panels, while he dragged the wounded toward cover, heart hammering with every second, leaving suspense. Taut tracer rounds zipped past, scorching the sand beneath his fingers, the Humvees jerking as they crawled forward, the SEALs adjusting fire, while the A-10 twisted low, one engine smoking, leaving anticipation. Razor-edged explosions erupted nearby, sending clouds of debris into the air, sand and metal raining across the battlefield, while he pressed the wounded lower, coordinating fire with the SEALs, leaving tension. Slicing sharp, the horizon shimmered with heat waves and smoke spiraled high as the convoy inched forward, every nerve taut, while he glanced skyward, praying the aircraft would hold together, leaving suspense. Taut A-10 twisted violently, dodging enemy fire, sparks flying from ripped panels, engines screaming, while he barked orders to the SEALs covering every inch of the convoy, leaving anticipation. Razor-edged mortar rounds shook the desert floor, sand and rock kicked into the air, while he dragged the wounded inch by inch toward a slight ridge, the A-10 twisting low above, leaving tension. Slicing sharp tracer rounds zipped past him, scorching the sand, while the Humvees lurched forward, sparks flying from destroyed panels, the SEALs firing in unison, covering every move, leaving suspense. Taut convoy pressed forward inch by inch, while the horizon shimmered with heat and distant explosions erupted every second, stretching. Taut, while he glanced skyward for any sign of relief, leaving anticipation. Slicing sharp, they A-10 twisted low across the desert, engines screaming, panels ripping, sparks flying, while he realized the aircraft was guiding them inch by inch toward open ground, leaving tension. Razor-edged sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the sand dunes, the convoy inching forward under covering fire, while the A-10 twisted violently, dodging rounds, leaving suspense. Taut dust clouds rose from nearby explosions, while he fired on exposed units, signaling coordinates to the aircraft, the SEALs covering every movement, leaving anticipation. Slicing sharp, the Humvees lurched forward, sparks flying from torn panels, while the wounded clung to cover, the desert trembling with every blast, leaving tension. Taut commander barked coordinates over the radio, while he relayed them to the SEALs, the convoy inching toward the ridge, while the A-10 twisted low, one engine smoking, leaving suspense. Razor-edged explosions erupted near the convoy, sand and metal flying everywhere while he fired, coordinating, covering fire, the A-10 twisting violently above, leaving anticipation. South horizon shimmered with heat waves, distant smoke rising from destroyed vehicles, while he pressed the wounded lower inch by inch, the convoy crawling forward, leaving tension. Slicing sharp tracer rounds zipped past his head, scorching the sand. As he fired on enemy positions, the seals covering every movement, while the A-10 twisted low, sparks flying from ripped panels, leaving suspense. South desert trembled under mortar fire, and the Humvees jerked forward while he adjusted fire, coordinating, with the seals dragging the wounded inch by inch, leaving anticipation. Razor-edged smoke and flames rose across the battlefield, the convoy pressing slowly forward under covering fire, while the A-10 twisted violently, one engine failing, sparks flying, leaving tension. Slicing sharp glanced skyward, hoping for one engine roar for any sign of help, while the seals kept cover fire blazing, the Humvees inching toward the ridge, leaving suspense. South A-10 twisted violently over the battlefield, metal frame ripping, sparks flying, engines screaming while he barked orders, coordinating every movement of the convoy, leaving anticipation. Slicing sharp explosions erupted close, sending clouds of sand and debris across the desert floor while he pressed the wounded lower, the seals firing with deadly precision, leaving tension. Razor-edged horizon shimmered with heat waves, distant smoke spiraled high while the Humvees crawled forward inch by inch, the A-10 twisting low, one engine smoking, leaving suspense. Tow tracer rounds streaked past him, scorching the sand, the convoy inching forward, the wounded clinging to cover, while the aircraft twisted violently overhead, leaving anticipation. Slicing sharp, the commander barked final coordinates, the convoy inching toward the ridge, the seals covering every movement, while the A-10 twisted low, sparks flying from torn panels, leaving tension. Taut explosions rocked the desert floor, dust and debris flying as he fired on exposed units, while the Humvees lurched forward inch by inch, the A-10 twisting violently above, leaving suspense. Razor-edged smoke and fire spiraled high across the battlefield, the desert trembling under the roar of engines, while he dragged the wounded toward cover, the seals maintaining perimeter, leaving anticipation. Slicing sharp, horizon shimmered with heat waves, distant explosions punctuating the chaos, while the convoy pressed forward inch by inch, the A-10 limping low, one engine failing, leaving tension. Tow tracer rounds zipped past, scorching the sand beneath him while he barked orders, coordinating fire with the seals, the Humvees inching forward under covering fire, leaving suspense. South desert trembled as mortar rounds exploded near the convoy, sand flying in clouds while the wounded clung to cover, and the A-10 twisted violently above, leaving anticipation. Razor-edged smoke and flames trailed from destroyed vehicles, the Humvees moving slowly, the seals firing, covering every movement, while the aircraft twisted low, one engine screaming, sparks flying, leaving tension. Slicing sharp glanced at the horizon, counting seconds, dust and heat shimmering while the convoy crawled forward inch by inch, the A-10 twisting violently overhead, leaving suspense. Tow tracer rounds zipped past his head, scorching the desert floor while he fired at exposed units, coordinating, covering fire, the seals moving the wounded inch by inch, leaving anticipation. Slicing sharp explosions erupted across the battlefield, sand and metal flying, the Humvees inching forward under fire, while the A-10 twisted low, one engine smoking, leaving tension. Razor-edged smoke and dust filled the air while he barked final orders to the seals, the convoy moving forward inch by inch. The aircraft twisting violently, sparks flying, leaving suspense. South horizon shimmered with heat, distant dust clouds signaling possible enemy stragglers, while the Humvees crawled forward inch by inch, the A-10 twisting low above, leaving anticipation. Slicing sharp explosions rocked the desert floor, tracer rounds cutting across the sand while he dragged the wounded toward cover, the seals firing with deadly precision, leaving tension. South convoy pressed forward inch by inch, the Humvees jerking forward sparks flying from torn panels, while the A-10 twisted violently overhead, one engine failing, leaving suspense, razor-edged smoke and flames spiraled high, the desert trembling under mortar strikes, while he coordinated fire inch by inch, guiding the wounded forward, leaving anticipation slicing sharp, the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows, the convoy inching forward, sparks flying from destroyed panels, the A-10 twisting low over the battlefield, engines screaming, leaving tension taut, dust and smoke hung heavy, while he pulled the wounded behind cover, the SEALs covering every move, the convoy inching toward open ground, leaving suspense, slicing sharp, tracer rounds zipped past, scorching the sand as the Humvees moved slowly, the A-10 twisting violently overhead, sparks flying from torn panels, leaving anticipation taut. The desert trembled under the roar of engines and the smell of burning metal as the convoy crept forward, each Humvee inching through sand and debris, the wounded clinging to cover, while the A-10 screamed low above, leaving suspense taut pressed, the injured closer dragging them behind a smoking wreck, while tracer rounds cut across the horizon, the SEALs returning fire with deadly precision, the A-10 twisting violently, one engine smoking, sparks flying, leaving anticipation, razor-edged explosions erupted around the convoy, throwing sand and debris into the air. He fired back, adjusting fire with the SEALs, while the battle-damaged A-10 limped low, sparks raining from ripped panels, leaving tension slicing sharp, the horizon shimmered with heat waves and smoke from destroyed vehicles, the desert alive with fire and chaos as the convoy moved inch by inch, the aircraft twisting violently above, leaving suspense. Tav barked orders over the radio while dragging the wounded toward a small ridge, the SEALs covering every movement, and tracer rounds whizzed past, while the A-10 twisted low, one engine failing, leaving anticipation, razor-edge mortar rounds shook the desert floor, sand kicking up in clouds, while the convoy crawled forward. Inch by inch, the SEALs firing from cover and the A-10 limping violently across the sky, leaving tension slicing sharp, smoke spiraled high from burning vehicles, the desert trembling under the roar of engines. He pulled the wounded closer, adjusting coordinates with the SEALs, the aircraft twisting low, sparks flying, leaving suspense. Tav Humvees lurched forward, sparks flying from destroyed panels, tracer rounds cutting the air as he scanned the horizon, the limping A-10 guiding them toward open ground, leaving anticipation, razor-edged, sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across sand dunes, explosions erupting nearby. He pressed the wounded lower, while the SEALs provided covering fire, the A-10 twisting violently overhead, leaving tension slicing sharp, dust clouds rose from nearby impacts, sand and debris flying, the convoy inching forward, each movement calculated, the aircraft one engine failing, sparks flying, leaving suspense. Tav glanced skyward, praying the aircraft would hold together, the Humvees crawling forward inch by inch, the SEALs covering every move, tracer rounds sizzling past, leaving anticipation, razor-edged. The desert trembled as mortar rounds exploded around them, sand flying in clouds, the wounded clinging to cover, while the A-10 twisted violently, sparks raining from ripped panels, leaving tension slicing sharp. The commander barked final coordinates over the radio, the convoy inching toward the ridge, the SEALs maintaining perimeter, the A-10 twisting low, one engine failing, leaving suspense. Taut explosions erupted in the distance, sand and metal raining across the desert, while he fired back, adjusting covering fire, the Humvees jerking forward, the aircraft twisting violently, leaving anticipation. Razor-edged smoke and flames spiraled across the battlefield, the convoy moving cautiously, the SEALs covering every inch of ground, the A-10 twisting low, one engine screaming, leaving tension slicing sharp, tracer rounds zipped past, scorching the sand beneath his fingers, the wounded pressing close, while he coordinated fire, the Humvees inching forward, sparks flying from destroyed panels, leaving suspense. Tav desert trembled under repeated mortar strikes, dust and sand swirling, the Humvees crawling forward, the SEALs returning fire, the A-10 limping low over the battlefield, leaving anticipation, razor-edged. Explosions erupted around the convoy, debris and metal flying every direction, while he pulled the wounded behind cover, the aircraft Twisting violently, sparks raining from ripped panels, leaving tension slicing sharp. The horizon shimmered with heat waves, distant dust and smoke rising. The convoy inching forward, the SEALs maintaining perimeter, while the A-10 twisted low, one engine failing, leaving suspense. Outracer rounds streaked past him, scorching the desert floor, the Humvees jerking forward, sparks flying from torn panels, the wounded clinging to cover, while the aircraft twisted violently, leaving anticipation razor-edged. Commander barked final orders, the convoy inching toward open ground, the SEALs covering every movement, while the A-10 twisted low, sparks flying, engines screaming, leaving tension slicing, sharp smoke and flames spiraled high across the battlefield. The desert trembling under the roar of engines, he dragged the wounded inch by inch, while the aircraft twisted violently above, leaving suspense. Humvees crawled forward, sparks flying from torn panels, the SEALs firing, covering every move, while tracer rounds zipped past, the horizon shimmering with heat, leaving anticipation razor-edged and debris filled the air. The convoy inching forward, the wounded pressing close, while he barked final orders, coordinating covering fire. The A-10 twisting low, one engine failing, leaving tension slicing sharp. The horizon shimmered with heat, distant explosions erupting, the desert alive with chaos. The convoy moving slowly, the aircraft twisting violently overhead, leaving suspense. Glanced skyward, praying the aircraft would hold together, the Humvees crawling forward, the SEALs providing covering fire, the limping A-10 sparks flying, leaving anticipation razor-edge. Mortar rounds shook the desert sand, kicking up clouds, while he dragged the wounded toward cover, the Humvees inching forward, the SEALs firing in unison, the aircraft twisting low, leaving tension slicing sharp. The sun dipped below, the horizon shadows stretching across the battlefield, the convoy crawling forward. The A-10 twisting violently, one engine failing, sparks flying, leaving suspense. Explosions erupted close by, sand and metal flying, the wounded pressing low, while he coordinated fire, the SEALs covering every movement, the aircraft limping across the sky, leaving anticipation razor-edged and smoke hung heavy. The convoy inching forward, the SEALs covering every inch of ground, while the A-10 twisted low, one engine screaming, leaving tension slicing sharp. Pressed, the wounded closer dragging. Then behind wreckage, the Humvees crawling forward, sparks flying, tracer rounds cutting across the horizon, while the aircraft twisted violently, leaving suspense. Desert trembled under repeated blasts, the convoy inching towards safety, the SEALs providing covering fire, while the A-10 limped low, one engine smoking, leaving anticipation razor-edged. Explosions erupted around them, sand and debris flying, the Humvees jerking forward, the wounded clinging to cover, while the aircraft twisted violently, sparks raining from torn panels, leaving tension slicing sharp. The horizon shimmered with heat waves, distant smoke spiraling high, the convoy inching forward, the SEALs maintaining perimeter, while the A-10 twisted low, one engine failing, leaving suspense. Outracer rounds streaked past his head, scorching the desert floor, the Humvees crawling forward, sparks flying from destroyed panels, the wounded pressing low, the aircraft twisting violently, leaving anticipation razor-edged. Commander barked final coordinates, the convoy inching toward open ground, the SEALs covering every movement, while the A-10 twisted low, sparks flying, engines screaming, leaving tension slicing sharp. The desert finally began to quiet, explosions fading. The convoy secured, the wounded tended to, while the aircraft limped slowly toward the horizon, one engine failing, sparks flying, leaving suspense. Allowed himself a shaky breath, glancing skyward, the Humvees forming a perimeter, the SEALs checking the wounded, the A-10 twisting low one last time, leaving anticipation razor-edged. The desert stretched endlessly, the convoy safe for now, the wounded tended to, the SEALs securing the area, while the A-10 finally disappeared over the horizon. Engines screaming, sparks flying, leaving tension slicing sharp. Sand and smoke settled across the battlefield, the Humvees finally regrouped, the wounded stable, the SEALs on perimeter, the A-10 limping low across the horizon, leaving suspense. Taut and hearts pounding. The sun had set, the desert quiet except for the fading roar of engines, the convoy safe, the wounded tended to, and the SEALs exhausted, while the aircraft twisted one last time, leaving anticipation razor-edged. Night settled over the battlefield. The desert silent, the convoy secure the SEALs tending to every detail while the limping A-10 disappeared into the distance, engines screaming, sparks flying, leaving tension slicing sharp. The convoy finally allowed themselves relief, the wounded safe. The Humvees forming a perimeter, the SEALs exhausted, while the aircraft twisted low, one engine failing, sparks flying, leaving suspense. South desert lay quiet except for the faint roar fading in the distance. He finally realized the impossible had been achieved. The convoy survived because one damaged aircraft refused to give up, leaving anticipation razor-edged. Horizon shimmered faintly. The convoy secure, the SEALs regrouping the wounded stable, while the A-10 disappeared into the night, leaving suspense slicing sharp and hearts full of awe.